button push there? Hello, I'd like to welcome you all and call this meeting to order. Would you please stand and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the City of Shelton Commission meeting. First item would be our weekly commission reports, and I'll ask Commissioner Moore if she has some things she's attending this week.
I do. I have on Wednesday my regular briefing, and then Wednesday evening I'm going to be attending a tourism meeting sponsored by the North Mason Chamber of Commerce. On Thursday, I'll be attending the Mason County Foundation for Hope board meeting. On Friday, I will be attending a League of Women Voters board meeting. And then on Saturday, Coda Street is hopping, so I'll be attending the Off the Walls and Garage Sale Maniacs anniversary parties, the Lotus Swans grand opening, and then on Saturday evening, the Shelton High School Baseball Booster Club benefit. And that's it.
All right, and Commissioner Olson?
You know, my week is exactly the same as Tracy's, except that also on Sunday morning, it's Mason Transit Authority's Employee Appreciation Breakfast. Other than that, I'll be at all those events myself, except your briefing.
Okay.
And I won't be at any of those things they're going to. But I was thinking on Thursday evening that I may be attending the Choice High School graduation ceremony. So I've never been there, but I think it's a great experience in our community, and so I'm planning on, unless a major event or something cancels that, planning to be there on Thursday. And that completes our commission reports for this week. So next is the opportunity for general public comment. We have two opportunities during the meeting, and this is the time to talk to us about things that you are involved in. So if I call your name and you want to talk later, just let me know. If you want to speak now, this would be the first opportunity. Tom Davis? No. Come on forward.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. First, I'd like to say thank you for coming to a compromise on the skateboard park. I was afraid that might slip between the cracks. I really appreciate that as an ordinary citizen, and I think you'll reap the rewards of that decision in the future. And it also proves that you can work with the county, one municipality to another, and I've seen that happen more lately than I have seen it with the coalition and so on. I haven't seen that happen so much in the past. What I'm asking you to do now is, because we have such an enormous debt for the sewer facility, is again to work with the county and also with the port. One of the things I'd like to suggest is, as you know, the Ridgeport Motor Raceway is going to have an RV facility there. At least they have a proposal to have an RV facility, and that should be on the city sewer. It would be a shame to have a brand new business open up in the vicinity of an industrial area that is prime for growth, and then have them dig septic tanks. It doesn't make any sense on anybody's schedule, I think, to have that happen, especially since the sewer is not that far away. I've talked to the county about it a little bit, and they were all enthusiastic, and someone from the commissioner's side of that equation will come down and talk to you, so you don't get caught flat-footed. I was just bringing this up because I think that's very necessary to have any new businesses, even though it's not in the sewer, in the city, to go to be on the sewer system. So I hope you'll consider that. I also hope you'll revisit opening up a conversation with the Port of Shelton. The fact that that sewer runs right by the Port of Shelton and they're not hooked up is a sore point for almost everyone who's knowledgeable about that. About a year and a half ago, I brought this up and I spoke to the port about it. And actually, I never got an answer that was a good answer saying, no, we don't want to do it because we can't do it for some economic reason. It was other reasons that I think can be overcome. So that, if you get these two facilities hooked up to your sewer, I think it might help to lower the rate and also set a precedence for that anything new that comes into this city within the realm of the growth management area will hook up to the city sewer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next is Charles Orthman, and he has asked for just a couple of minutes extra because he's got a video he's going to play, and so we're going to give him 5 minutes tonight. And so, but he had talked to us earlier in the week about this. So, Charles, you're up.
Thank you very much. My name is Charles Orthman. I'm a Great View resident now. I want to thank the Commission for allowing me to come in this evening and show this video. When I first approached the Commission about 16 months ago, I had photographs of things that I didn't like to see in Shelton, and I've decided to change my tune a little bit and show you some things that I do like to see in Shelton. As a caboose volunteer, it's a little slow, and I'd like to pick things up a little bit and see if I can bring some economic prosperity to the city of Shelton. So I shot this video about 8 years ago. This is your Mason County Historical Society car show. I think it's a premier event. I think that it has a lot of potential to get bigger and to add extra features on to the car show to bring more people into this community. Recently, I've been working up at the LeMay Foundation, the LeMay Family Collection in Tacoma. Marymount Military Academy is my former school. And I will be exposed to museum and car lovers and the opportunity to learn a little bit more about how to bring museums and cars together. And hopefully someday we can develop that Mel Chevrolet building. That I think that that would be an ideal place to put a car museum in the future. I know that Harold LeMay and Art Mel had the same vision in life. They wanted to bring the beauty of the American car to the general public. And Harold's done that with a phenomenal 97-acre complex. And I think that we could probably rally some support through our local museum and the car show and see if we can't bring some of those cars down here and some of those car lovers. So I'll work with Justin and the museum, and we'll see if we can't add a few features to this car show and get some more people in here. So I love that time of year. And that's something that anybody can do. And we always seem to have good weather. It's a good time of year. This year, the only complaint that I had, there were 4 car shows. There was the Show and Shine, the Shelton Show and Shine, and Cruising at the Creek, the Forest Festival, and the museum. They were all kind of close together. So I don't know about spreading them out a little bit, but I can guarantee you that I have access to car lovers who would love to see this type of video. So when I go up there tomorrow to finish my paint job, I'll go ahead and put a bug in there about what's going on here in Shelton. Okay?
All right. Thank you very much. My quick question. So you made that video yourself, so you're an amateur videoist?
Yes. And actually, with the addition of James Johnson Audio Video Recording Studio, along with the music store, these things are becoming more realistic of a possibility for me in the future. And I could turn out videos like this for just about anything that goes on in Shelton.
All right. Any other questions for Charles? He came here and he's still got a couple minutes left here. Just he kind of put that there together, and appreciate you helping out the city.
I'm in the caboose Thursdays 2 to 4 if you want to stop by.
I see you every day out my window.
All right.
So
Thanks, Charles.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Let's see. We have now Toby Kevin. Would you like to speak now?
Later, please.
Later? Okay. And then we have Gary Yando. And you can speak if it's a specific subject that we're involved in and is pertinent to that. We have allowed public comment during those if it pertains to that subject. So that's kind of our little rule that we kind of use sometimes. All right. Next is the consent agenda. Have my fellow commissioners had time to review the material in the consent agenda? And Tracy, could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers number 85148 through 85175 in the amount of $23,547.23. Commission meeting minutes from the business meeting of January 20th, 2015.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda passes. We have no old business now at this meeting, but we do have some items under new business, and the first is going to be presented to us by our Community and Economic Development Director, Steve Goins, concerning the Human Services Committee. So,
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I can be brief on my report here. I have prepared a briefing that sort of outlined the proposal here. The Human Services Committee was established some months ago. During the time that the committee was being established and we were developing the policies and the objectives of the committee, there was some discussion over what the committee should be called. At the time, staff came up with the name Human Services Committee. Subsequently, the committee has met for several months now, and one item they've requested is to rename the committee. As the report indicates, their recommendation is the Shelton Poverty Action Team. A number of the committee members are here tonight. I expect they may want to weigh in on this as well, but in summary, they're requesting consideration for the name change for the Human Services Committee. The resolution that's attached is the second resolution that established the committee as it currently exists now. If you're entertaining this name change, I'll bring back at a future meeting a resolution where we incorporate that name change as for future action.
okay, is anybody here who would like to speak to this issue? Yes, Mr. Kevin, do you want to speak?
Toby Kevin, 709 Terrace View Drive. Good evening. I think actually what we propose is advisory team. Because in fact, when you read the charter, we're not an action group. But
Okay,
the other thing, just a footnote, if memory serves, somewhere in this early process, I stood at this very podium rostrum and suggested that we do this, and I think I saw at least two heads up there nod. So there was it's not something we pulled out of a hat. It was something that we've tried to do all along. And if you would consider it favorably, we will be grateful. If you don't, we'll live with it. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Toby. Anybody else want to speak to this? Yes, Mr. Davis?
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I had no intention of speaking this, but I'm compelled to say, when you're speaking of an action group, that's the word poverty bothers me, and it should bother me, and it bothers everyone. When people watch this and you stream it live and so on, you can be more supportive, more productive, more positive, because for obvious reasons, we have problems here, and there's no doubt about it, and there's a lot of people below the poverty line here. Advertising that doesn't produce anything to make it any better. We all recognize the condition. I don't think it's a great idea to advertise the condition in the paper. That the word poverty will attract attention on the radio and video. I'm not sure that's a great idea, and as I said, I apologize. I had no intention of speaking on this subject, but it kind of hit me that do we really want to say that? Is it doing any good? Just we all know what the condition already is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak towards the name change? Yes, Ms. Volger? Volger? Just state your name for the record, please.
Thank you. That's the part I generally forget. Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. when this committee was put together long before I was even considering being part of it, I spoke to the fact that poverty should be part of the name. Sometimes I have the sense that we would be more comfortable with the notion of poverty if we simply didn't see it. If we used another name for it, if people who live in poverty were not quite as visible, that we would then be more comfortable, because I think it does discomfort us to see people who are seriously in need. But I also think we should be made uncomfortable by it, because it isn't a good situation to have a large portion of your community living in poverty, living without homes, living with hungry children and insufficient means. I think if we try to erase the fact that it exists, it's too easy to put it out of our minds and forget that it is an issue. And so I would like not to see that word disappeared. Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody from the public that wants to speak more about this? I guess I'm open to my fellow commissioners weighing in on this, if they would like.
I can understand both sides of those comments that were just recently made. I do feel strongly that it is unanimous that the group has chosen that name, and so I'm sure a lot of time in the meetings has been put into the choosing of those words. So I would be inclined to allow the group to name themselves. I will say that I'm a little bit worried. I mean, SPAT sounds like kind of, we might be in for it. So, but that would be, well, I agree with Tom. I also agree with the group, and I believe that you should have that option.
Yeah, I really appreciate that the people have stepped up and wanted to participate in this, and I think if they want to change their name, it makes them feel better, and it's the work they're doing. I have no problem with it. I will say, however, though, that I'll probably always refer to you as the Human Services Committee, just
Yeah.
like I still call Pro-Build Lumbermen. It's just already been established, and, you know, you can call yourselves what you want, but I think that that's pretty ingrained in most everybody already, but I wouldn't stand in the way of the name change.
We all agree on this subject because I figure it's you guys' group, and if you want to change your name, more power to you, so I don't have any problem at all about doing that. There's no action at this time, but I believe that we will come forward with a formal name change resolution or whatever to make sure all the documentation is correct, but I have no problem with that. So, does that conclude your report, Mr. Goins?
Yes, I'll just bring this back for final approval of the name change in the coming weeks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for all your work that you're all doing towards this. And again, remember, it's hard to get 100% agreement on anything anywhere, so I think we're going okay. So next is going to be a briefing presented to us by our city administrator, Dave O'Leary, about some lobbyist work.
In 2013, we received $1.5 million for a sewer project. It's based on a capital request to the legislature. It was in the form of a grant. And that was to fund an intertie project that had to do with the Shelton Hills development. At a recent legislative send-off, staff included thinking that we needed more money for Basin 3, a request that we get the same thing for Basin 3. And I wasn't sure what to do with that because we hadn't planned on it. We put a lot of our energy into the Sewer Funding Coalition and really just hadn't got to that point yet. Well, a couple weeks ago, the mayor and I were over at the Capitol working on Sewer Funding Coalition issues, and Representative McEwen came up to us and he says, "Where's your request? We need your request if we want to, in order to be able to make it." So So we came back over and said, yeah, we got to get that going. So we did get the request over to him. Things are a little different this year. 2 years ago, when we did this before, we did have Arbaugh and Associates lobbying on our behalf. So Arbaugh knows the right people to talk to. He knows the right things to say. He knows how things are done over there. And he was able to help McEwen and the other legislators at that time be successful. This year, McEwen, and it was very helpful because McEwen was on the Capital Appropriations Committee. This year, McEwen has done a good job because he's got himself moved from the Capital Appropriations Committee over to the regular Appropriations Committee, which is kind of, I think, arguably a step up for him. But that leaves us less capable with less help on that Appropriations Committee. So in order to give ourselves the best chance of success, we don't want to lose something else. So and the appropriate thing to do is to make sure that we engage Arbaugh if we want to get that. The complication is that we already have engaged Arbaugh to do work for the Sewer Funding Coalition. And so in the event that we want to hire him to do something for us, we really should have two separate contracts. So, and I think it's important because we need to account for his efforts and our expenditures separately. It also, I think, helps to keep differentiated as far as Public Disclosure Commission filings as well. Sorry, that wasn't in the staff report, but it occurred to me earlier today as I was thinking about this report. I thought, oh yeah, we've got to do that too. There are some economies that come from this. The Arbaugh's current contract for the Sewer Funding Coalition is $3,500 a month. And assuming that we approve both contracts, not just one or the other, then he would work under two contracts, and he would kind of give us a better cost, a better price. So it would cost $5,000 for the two, or $2,500 a piece, instead of $3,500 for one. As far as the new contract is concerned, assuming you approve it, those costs would be covered by the sewer utility. And when we have tried to estimate costs associated with lobbying, it's been a good idea if we assume that it's going to take them clear through till the end of June in order to be able to get done, because that's what happened 2 years ago. And I don't things don't appear to be any better than they were then, but I think you just need to plan for the worst. And they have to get it done by the end of June, because that's when the fiscal year starts. It's July 1, and so they need to have a budget for the upcoming year. So the total cost of this, allowing for the fact that we're starting a little later than we would have normally, a couple weeks anyway, we shouldn't exceed about $12,500, and that's assuming that the contract extends to the end of June. Now, as to the other contract, really, there's not that, everything is the same in that contract that you authorized in late December, except that the price is reduced by $1,000 a month to account for the economies of the two contract, and that's the cost. And those costs will be paid for out of Sewer Funding Coalition funds. And we're expecting the maximum total cost of that to be in the range of $16,000, and we've got, at this point, $20,248 in the bank, money that we've raised from the partners. So we could end up with a surplus on that depending on what happens, and there's also a need, as I've been mentioning, and I'm not ready to talk about that tonight because I've been so busy just getting this done. But, I mean, it would help if we had a little bit of staff support for it, because I'm having to do my job plus the communications associated with the Sewer Funding Coalition is very challenging. As to the both contracts, again, both contracts must be approved in order to secure the lower cost for either one. And so, given the amount of dollars that are at stake, we're making a request for $1.5 million. Staff is recommending that the commission approve each contract for legislative services separately, and that you, and with both of them, that you authorize the city administrator to make the necessary budget amendments. And again, the dollars for that are accounted for, are explained in the staff report and in my comments tonight. It's not a general fund expense. It's a sewer fund, so you got a different silo, and it's, if you tried to ask for this out of the general fund, I wouldn't be here tonight. So that concludes staff's comments. I'll answer your questions if you have any.
You mentioned staff support. Now, would that be for the Sewer Funding Coalition or for our ask?
Sewer Funding Coalition.
So you want the city to pay for more of that, or from the fund that's left over?
That would be left over. That would be funds that would be otherwise unspent.
Unspent.
In the Sewer Funding Coalition.
If that doesn't happen, then you would be relying on staff to fund that?
Yeah. Yes. As I have been doing all along.
Right.
So.
And that brings me to my other part of this is that, last year when we did get the grant, that was great, but I think it was also important to note that it was tied to an economic stimulus option, that it was pretty attractive to the legislatures. I'm not so sure that this will be as attractive because there's really no economic impact tied to it. I like the idea of asking, but I'm also starting to get concerned that we're really going to the well maybe a little too often when we're cutting the sewer budget. We keep telling those guys no, but what did we dip out of them last year? Close to $35,000, $40,000 between the lobbyists and what we spent on the Sewer Funding Coalition. I mean, that was 20 grand right there, and then we paid for the lobbyists last year.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't brought that accounting tonight.
Well, I'm just throwing out some quick numbers. I could be off a little bit, but by my math, we're over 30 grand that we've used out of the last year that we took out of the budget, the sewer budget.
Yeah.
And now we're coming back again for more, so I'm starting to wonder, I like the idea, but I'm going to be real hesitant for the future. If this works, great, I'll eat my words, but I'm a little bit skeptical. I'll support it this time, but I don't think in the future going forward, unless this works each year, I'm thinking we're sending a message to the guys down there that run the plant that what they ask for isn't as important as what we're deeming important, lobbyists and coalition funding. So that's my comment.
My comments are maybe along a similar vein, in that I'm wondering if you're including, I'm concerned that the amount of time that you're spending on this, is that being calculated into the total costs?
No.
And, okay, and then, so that would bring it up quite a bit. And then the other thing I'm wondering, just as I was looking at the contracts here, and this is maybe a small thing, but I noticed that they're both from, for a time frame beginning January 1, which I understand that we have already started working with ARBA for the Sewer Funding Coalition, but for this other, should we not start the contract commencement February 1?
Yeah, I missed that, and clearly we're not asking ARBA to work on that during the month of January. I could probably change that without any complication.
Okay.
Regarding my time, there's probably pretty limited time as it relates to the second contract, the one that we're talking about doing. The die is cast on the Sewer Funding Coalition. That's something that we're just going to have to do. I guess I didn't fully appreciate the time commitment that was going to be necessary when I made my original request to you in December. And in fact, going back when we put together the whole package, the plan was always to get assistance in order to build a coalition and then turn it over to the lobbyist once we got it going. But there's just more work involved in it. And to be fair about it, we've never done this before, and so we're learning a little more about it. I think if I had it to do over again, I would have maybe kept our intern a little bit longer and assisted during this period. Or maybe have him take a couple weeks off during Christmas and then come back after the session started. But that's, at this point, if you do this, I can get a little bit of help. If you don't do it, then it's actually going to be more challenging.
So if we don't do it, then you're saying it's going to take us more money of staff time to continue the coalition's effort.
Yeah, I think this gives us some economies that we wouldn't otherwise have had.
How much would you estimate?
I don't know. I don't know,
And
maybe,
are you
I'd
working-
say 4 or 5 hours a week, at least, if not maybe 10.
And where did it go with AWC on this? I thought we were sort of kind of working with them on some of this stuff?
Oh, no, there's no loss of commitment from AWC. They're still on board. It's just,
But not financially.
no.
It's all on us.
Well, yeah.
I could kind of chime in a little bit. I've had probably the most amount of hours because, again, I started the coalition. And that's hundreds of hours, and that's volunteer time. I've not charged the city for those hours. I've donated $2,000 personally into the coalition fund. I have driven thousands of miles on my little car, and I've driven our city administrator on many of those trips, not charging the city anything for that. I've been going 1 day a week to the Capitol and meeting with the lobbyists, our elected officials, other lobbyists, and we have a real coalition. This is by no means a very small group of people in committed cities that has shown to be, in the terms of one lobbyist who doesn't know anything about us, who has spent 33 years of his over there, he said, you're doing exactly what you need to do if you really want to be effective and get significant money for your city. It's not easy. It's a battle, and it's been my passion, and I think that $5,000 or $6,000 for lobbyist effects towards the possibility of $1.5 million grant. Folks, we need money someplace else other than our ratepayers. And I've done everything I could to push this thing, and I'll stand behind the actual reports of success are coming in, and we have even a couple of cities that I believe are committed just this week, which would add almost over $2,000 more dollars to the coalition, but we can't quite say that exactly who it is because until they vote on it and it's public. So we have not only gained the amount of money that we wanted for the coalition, but we are now starting to regain some of our administrative and staff for which we had said we wanted to kind of do too. So we're starting to build on that funding also. On February 18th, we have 2 days. It's called Action Days for the Association of Washington Cities. And on the 18th, I will be passing out 100 invites to a meeting at the AWC offices at 4 o'clock. And I'm looking to continue to get more cities to join this coalition. So I'm putting myself out there. I'm doing everything I can. And the reason is that we have built all of our infrastructure, and we have gotten pretty small help through grants. This is an opportunity through the coalition, through the capital budget process with the $1.5 million, through our United States Congress people for possible grant opportunities. I mean, as far as I've done everything I possibly can to get Basin 3 paid for without the ratepayers paying that additional fee. And I know that I've done a successful and a good job in the eyes of the people I'm dealing with on a state level. So do I want to support with the lobbyist effect? Absolutely. But, you know, there is no guarantees. It's like the Seahawks. To me, I thought we had it guaranteed, and then a split second, and it was gone. But from what we're doing, you're not going to get this kind of money if you're just going to give your legislators the bill and say, we have no lobbyist effects to go along with it, and we don't show up over there on that doorstep. So I'm willing to continue to do my push in the state capitol through the coalition and this budget request. And all I can say is if we lose, if we don't get the money, it won't be because I didn't put the time in. And so that's all I can say. And I'm not looking for huge kudos or any of that stuff. I'm just working for the city of Shelton. I'm working for the citizens. And at $101 a month sewer rates growing to $135 in the next 5 years, I just know that we got to fight over there in that place. And we got to do it with lobbyists, and we got to do it with everything we got, because the rates are just going up, and I'm hearing it every day, that, we need money from another source. So that's kind of my ramble on that situation. I think we do need to support this extra lobbyist activity, and from my experience with Mr. Arbaugh, he is very, very qualified and very much respected over there in the Capitol. So that is my ramble on the subject, I guess. So we're looking for support or no support. I mean, that's what it looks like here. It says we need to either jump in and support this, or I guess not.
Yeah, the question before you, I think appreciate, is whether or not we add the Arbaugh contract to add support for the city's own capital appropriation request. And the other contract is already approved, and we're already running with it. We're already working on it. So,
and it would be not 6 months; it would be 5 months, and it may only be 2 months. I mean, we haven't 100% guarantee that it's going 6 months, but we have to plan for the possibility.
That's correct.
My concern is, I know that Dave has done a good job, and I know that he will work hard for us. I guess what my main concern is that we are able to accurately account for all the time, effort, money that is going in, and I appreciate all of everything that you're donating, but there is also, I think, a need to really realistically look at the efforts that we're putting forth on this, in case, because I know that the city has been asked, well, if you're successful in this, would you consider going on to another type of advocacy? And so I think before we can even look at decisions like that, we have to know how it affects our city and what the cost to our city is, and do we have the capacity to look at the bigger picture. So just with this one project, I just would like to understand a little more.
I can answer one question. As far as future commitments, if this was to continue on, I would be happy to sit on a chair at AWC for a coalition of these cities. I mean, we spent a lot of time getting it, and they're anxious to possibly continue. It would not have anything to do with Shelton. It's not my intent that we do this next year, and I've said it a couple of times. It would be totally under AWC, and that group would be self-funding, and we would be just a player like any other city. So that's my commitment next year.
Let me add one other thing. I think at least related to the lobbying part, to the extent that I'm at the Capitol and I'm lobbying, I am obliged to account for my time under the Public Disclosure Commission rules. So to the extent that we're counting that time, then that is. Of course, what it doesn't cover is the organizing time. It's the time that it takes to put together the coalition, communicate with the coalition, and that sort of thing. So those hours don't get reported. I don't take the time to allocate my hours. I generally just take the commission's decisions and then run with them, and try to get as much of what they're asking me to do done as I can. And so I haven't accounted for it. I could start paying more attention to that, but to the extent that I do that, it means I can get less done on something else. So that's the reality of it. But I'm respectful of your concerns. It has taken a fair amount of time this year. I didn't get work plan things done that I'd planned on because I was doing the Sewer Funding Coalition. And there's a risk associated with it, and it's unavoidable. There's a risk associated with going and applying for a grant because you don't know if you're going to get the grant, and you're obliged to put the time and the money into it in order to be able to get it. And so this is the world that we're in. If we don't want to, the default is easy. The default is we borrow more money. And what this is about is trying to find a way to avoid that. And with every step we take, we've got to take a chance that our time is wasted or doesn't yield results on that effort. So that's the unavoidable game that we have to play. If we want to have a shot at doing this project without borrowing as much money as we otherwise have to get. So
I would also say if we don't do this, then what's the option? The only option is to continue to raise rates on the ratepayers, and that's not my favorite option. I mean, we're there. I mean, we are one of the highest in the state, if not the. So
now the reason we're in this, the reason we're here is because our rates are too high, and we've still got another $6.5 million project to do, and we're just trying to not have to borrow it.
Well, and I think we all understand that, and we're all extremely hopeful and positive about the outcome of that. I guess I'm concerned about future projects and like, when do we know if we have success, and when do we quit? And if we get success, then do we continue on in other avenues? So it's really difficult not being one of the main organizers and not being in the loop.
Yeah. We're going to win some of these and we're going to lose some of them. Probably. But, if you don't try, the only guarantee is if you don't try.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's got me into it, is just to be out there. And the least you can say at the end, look, if we got to raise rates, if we have to do this project, it isn't because we didn't bust our chops in order to be able to find the money to be able to keep that from happening.
Well, at this point, I am in favor of doing the additional contract with Arbonne Associates. So I guess that's our bottom line question right here.
And you do understand, as far as I'm not intending for the city of Shelton to start to do what we went through. We went through a lot of work with our intern, building up something which, I mean, we have cities that have joined our coalition which will have no chance of getting any benefit this year of what we're doing, but they believe in standing up and saying unfunded mandates are putting a huge pressure on the small rural cities. And they're joining just for that reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that did as a matter of principle.
Aside from, I understand about the coalition, I'm in favor of the additional work, of hiring Arbaugh for the additional work that will benefit just our city.
Right, and I'm not planning to spend any staff time next year. This year. Next year is AWC if it continues. Well, so I don't know what we do here. I guess if we concur that we are going to move forward with this, it looks like we don't have to make a motion. We just authorize you to make that.
No, there's an action. There's one contract to reapprove at a lower rate, another one to approve to establish additional work for Arbaugh. It's scheduled for the 12th to do that. I think I got in the wrong month. This is the 2nd, so it would be the 9th rather than the 12th. Sorry, excuse me for that on your staff report. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just read off my notes here. I see no action, no motion, no.
Well, that's because it's the three-touch rule would have it. Staff report tonight and action next week.
Well, just, if we're hiring a lobbyist starting on the 1st of February, and this action could use lobbyists, if we're going to do it, I would say like last week was the best week to start going on this. I mean, I would unfortunately throw the three-touch rule slightly on the shelf and see if we can't come to an agreement so we can contact our lobbyists and say, you're on, let's get going on this.
The sooner you start, the better, but again, this came together very quickly, and so.
We have postponed the three-touch rules under extreme conditions before.
I would just as soon wait and bring it under consent agenda for next week.
That would be fine with me
Okay.
as well. And I don't know, with the caveat that the dates really reflect, the dates of the contract reflect when the contract starts.
Okay, all right.
All right? Sounds good, so that's all we do. We're going to bring this, well, we need to do
I
the
heard
motion
somebody
now.
say, I heard somebody say consent agenda. I might go to Arbaugh and have him start a little early, and since he's missing opportunities to advocate, it's on the consent agenda, he might just throw it in gratis for a week, so, on the chance that he's going to get paid for it, so.
So do we need a motion?
No,
Tonight.
you just need to just say, put it on the consent agenda, and then that's what we'll do,
All right.
like we normally do.
Great discussion, good comments. We want to save money and make money at the same time. So that sounds good. Next is an administration report, and there's going to be, it looks like, something in here concerning the sidewalk standard policy.
Yeah, Mayor, this is Greg Clark, Public Works Director. Thank you, and this is a continuation, really, of the information we presented last week at our study session on January 26th, where it's kind of a complicated bunch of details associated with a change in what our current policy is for development requirements for infill lots, single-family residents in an NR zone, to a proposal by Mike and I and Steve to, what can we do to simplify this and reduce the cost to maybe generate some opportunities to get some of these infill lots done with really no compromise in the safety of our pedestrians and that, but to kind of look at where sidewalk is going to be placed and does it make sense, and take care of some of the details based on right-of-way width. So in short, we came up with a map of critical routes in the city, and we're going to need the commission to endorse that map at some point, but there's a draft map that shows the corridors that we feel sidewalks should be installed if infill lots happen. That includes substantial remodels. There was a question as to what is considered a substantial remodel, and that's really 50% of the assessed value of the structure on the site constitutes being significant remodel, which would trigger the responsibility to do one of these efforts.
Just a question, because Commissioner Olson has brought this up, and I tend to agree with him on something about remodeling 50%, is that if you change the building the footprint of the building, is that, because how did we land on that?
It's a different question.
Different situation.
Different question. This is if, say your structure is worth $100,000 and you do $50,000 or more worth of improvement to that building, then it's a significant or a substantial remodel and would trigger the requirements for compliance with one or the two alternatives, depending on whether or not you're on a critical route or not. The second part is if you are in alternate B and you are expanding the footprint of the existing building, then your pedestrian mitigation fee would be slightly higher than it would be if you stayed within the existing footprint of the building. Has nothing to do, I mean, you're in or out with regard to substantial remodel. If you're less than $50,000 on the $100,000 example, then you wouldn't qualify and you wouldn't have to do either.
Who would determine that? I mean, that seems like, what if you're doing interior decorating? I mean, I'm kind of, I'm trying to say, how would you determine what is a 50%?
The building, department has some general rules of the type of work you're doing and rough costs associated with that, and they'd apply that. Now, if you're really close, I guess it would be something you'd have to come in and talk over, but I think this has been done for years. Steve, maybe you can add a little more, maybe, I don't know.
I'm just asking, now it's time to ask the questions, I think, so.
That's a good question. For example, a residence where a substantial remodel might include new windows, new siding, and re-roofing the structure. We have ways of evaluating based on the volume of material or volume of area, how much that should cost in the marketplace. And generally, that's what sums up what those added values total. In some smaller cases, like the remodel of a bathroom, we generally just ask the contractor, is this a $2,000, is this a $5,000 remodel, and that's how we generally gauge those costs.
Okay.
I have a question, and Commissioner Olson brought this up at our last meeting, and I've been trying to remember what the answer was, or if there was an answer. And that is that in our city, we have a number of properties that are in bad repair. They're bank repos. They need a lot of work, and we do not want to discourage people from doing that. And so what I'm thinking is also being a member of the Housing Coalition and working with Habitat, as we are promoting this idea of using those homes and gradually changing over those homes, which would be great for our city, as well as we have a number of historic homes that we don't want to destroy the character of. How is this going to affect that? Do you think that these fees, is there a way to address those type of issues in the fees? If we have a program where we're promoting rehab for low income or for getting the homeless into housing? I hope that makes some sense.
I'm not exactly sure I can answer your question, but, again, it would depend for this sidewalk whether or not you take option A or option B. And this is specifically to infill in single-family NR zones. And there's a component of it that's commercial and then residential. Mm-hmm. But if, say, for example, it was a residential remodel for, low-income, Habitat for Humanity, that kind of thing, there was a discussion of modifications to a site that would maybe allow multiple types of residential units within a single-family. That's kind of a different question. Really, the question here is it 50% of the value of the structure on the assessor's roll? And if the amount of remodel is more than that, then you'd be required to either install a sidewalk if it's in a location that complies with alternate A, or B, you'd go to alternate B, that is, you would grade out the right-of-way and you would pay money into a mitigation fee, into a mitigation fund, sidewalk mitigation fund, that would allow us to then take that money and build infill sidewalk where it makes the most sense. And the other component of whether or not you even comply to need sidewalk under alternate A is you need to be within a half a city block of an existing sidewalk facility that's connected to something, so that we're not just building sidewalk to nowhere, as the term has called out. But the two proposals really are, you either build sidewalk where it makes sense and it has the ability to be connected, or you pay into this, you don't do anything but grade out the right-of-way and then pay money into a fund that will allow the city to either leverage that through grant funding to a larger sidewalk project that maybe is one of the projects that we would list in our 6-year program process. These are the priority sidewalk locations should money become available, or grant money. Or we could use that money with city crews to go in and to pay for the materials to allow the crews to make some areas more walkable maybe add crushed rock, maybe even build sidewalk if there's short sections. Depends on how much money we get in this mitigation fund. And we've been working with Kathleen, our city attorney, and she's very adamant that we need to be clear on the pedestrian routes where this alternate A would be specific. And then we need to set up an independent fund within the city's finance system to allow the money to be deposited and tracked and invested, I'd imagine, to keep that, money independent so that we could use it. And so that's kind of the meat and potatoes of it. The real reason we brought it back tonight are twofold. One of the commissioners asked that, we needed to have maybe a little more discussion on the mitigation, the pedestrian mitigation fee, the dollar amount that we would ask a builder to pay based on what they're doing. And in the packet, there was a table that was included that looks something like this, that basically is based, if you build sidewalk, then you don't pay any money into this mitigation fee. But if you are just grading out the right-of-way and adding some crushed rock to make it a walkable surface, then you'd pay money into the sidewalk fee, into this fund to allow sidewalks to be built where it makes sense. And it depends a lot on right-of-way width. Some of the right-of-way widths, if they aren't adequately wide enough, we would be posting at no parking. There was a question by Marilyn Vogler last week about that. What do we do in tight locations where no parking just won't be allowed, and you have an infill that wants to go in? What happens? What do you do? Because you're going to post it no parking. Where do they park? Well, according to the building codes, they're supposed to have 2 off-street parking stalls. So we would review the submittal from the applicant and say, are there 2 off-street parking stalls? Maybe there's an alley that provides for that. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's, a very tight site that doesn't allow for that. Within public right-of-way, you're allowed to park anywhere you want that has, parking ability to be parked there. So you may not be able to park in front of your house. You may have to park down the street a little bit, but that would certainly be within the rules of that. But I think those are very unique cases. There also was a discussion with, how are they going to, is the builder going to just go and start grading out this right-of-way? Well, they would have to come in and get a right-of-way permit so that our inspectors could oversee and make sure that, the grading effort out there isn't going to destroy meter boxes and possibly create storm drainage related problems and other things. So we'd have some control over any grading work that's done under alternate B with a right-of-way permit. And we're hopefully going to get that on the permit drawing so that, everybody knows and is clear that they need a permit before they go out and start grading out the right-of-way. The other thing that was asked about is, do we really want to just make a decision on this now, or should we create a committee possibly to review it further? My own personal recommendation, I think we've thought of a lot of different things here. I think we're pretty darn close to being able to, for the commissioners to make a decision. If we need to certainly get more information and more input, it'll take more time, but we're certainly willing to do that if that's the desire of the commission to do that. Mike has actually prepared a little flow chart that we could hand out. I don't think we need to review it right now, but we can hand it out. And it kind of looks at how the staff would review an application for an infill lot and make the decision as to, what would be built or not built. And then, so really tonight, my hope is that there could be a discussion by the commission as to the amount of mitigation fee that you would find. The idea kind of behind the mitigation fee is to take a percentage of what it would really cost to build a piece of sidewalk. And we just took an average, 60-foot lot and said, what's the cost of building sidewalk for that particular lot? And we came up with, for a lineal foot cost, so if it's 60 feet wide times this lineal foot cost of, say, $50 a lineal foot, around $3,000 on the average to build sidewalk on a standard 60-foot lot. Now that wouldn't include something that had a lot of grading effort or you needed a small retaining wall or other, related costs, but that was roughly the cost that we felt on the average a 60-foot lot would cost. So the mitigation fees that you see on the sheet are based on that $3,000 example, and the commission could go anywhere, from that number, higher or lower, and there's some, costs in here. So with that, I'm going to quit talking, answer any questions, and go from there.
Okay, now this is good conversation, and I just want to make sure that we did have some people that might want to speak to this night. So, Commissioner Olson, do you feel comfortable that we let the public speak a little on this now? And
I
then
got
Your Honor.
a few more comments and questions.
Yes.
Your Honor, just before you go ahead, I want to explain further one of the things that Mr. Clark said. I think that if it's the commission's choice to go ahead with a full-blown public involvement process or a committee or something like that, we can certainly do it. But that means that other work that we're engaged in right now is going to slip. We're going to get less done.
And the building season will slip away and...
Well, I mean, we're staging projects right now, and the reports that we've had planned for you from the beginning of the year have now slipped a week, maybe two, just based on the normal events. So if we're going to take this and we're going to do a public involvement process, I think that's fine, but you got to put it in the context of all the work that we have to do. And those public involvement processes, if you form a committee and so on, can be extraordinarily time-consuming. You're talking maybe even weeks of work to be able to do that. So
I personally am not leaning in that direction.
Okay. Anyway, but...
So, Commissioner Olson, I just asked you the question. So you want to talk about us amongst us, and then we would have some public comment. Just I wanted to see how you...
Yeah, I had a couple more things. I think what Tracy was getting at, I wanted to clarify that. And what I asked for and would be in favor of is on a house that's existing, if it's in the B zone, that if they don't change the footprint, I'd like to see something very low to really stimulate those properties being brought back to life. Right now, you're still hitting in the $1,200, $1,000 range for those. And I would like to see that lowered even more, would be one of my wants, wishes out of this thing. I think that anything we can do, even if we put a time period on it, 6 months, year, 8 months, whatever, something to really stimulate builders, homeowners, whatever, picking these properties up. There's hundreds of them through the city, and I think that whatever we can do, if it doesn't work, we can revisit it again in a year or whatever, that if it doesn't act like I want it to or whatever, I don't know. I just think that we need to do something, as long as we're addressing this, to do another step further to get that going.
Okay.
Would be my recommendation.
The example in the handout here, just for clarification, is that based on the right-of-way width, you end up with two numbers. One is a 50% of the cost of building the sidewalk, which is the $1,500.
Right.
And that's would be the cost if it's 20 feet wide.
Right.
If it's less than 20 feet, we're going to ask that $2,250 be put in. And then if you do what you're saying, Commissioner, is that if you didn't increase the footprint of the building, what we're saying is the cost of that pedestrian mitigation fee would be 67% of either alternate number 1 or 2, depending on the right-of-way width. So if you could come up with maybe a recommendation on the percentage that you would like us to apply to that?
I would say half if you complete the project within 6 or 9 months. Put a timeline on it, and if they don't complete it, then go back and, something to get them to really pay attention to it, that they're getting a great break, that get in there and do the project, and if you don't complete it, then
Okay.
or make them pay the $1,500 up front and reward them with $500 if they finish it in the time period. That way, the city gets their mitigation fee, and we don't have to go chasing them or something. I just want some way to stimulate that. I think it can work.
So, can I ask a quick question? Are you thinking along the lines of a permanent incentive, or more like what we did with the transportation impact fee, where we initially reduced that for residential projects for, I think it was a year in that case, before it escalated to the full amount that was brought up in the reports.
Yeah, I think I would be willing to compromise that, make it a temporary program and see how it goes and see what the economy does.
Say at 40 or 50% for the first year of the program, and then go to the 67% or whatever other reduction rate
Yeah,
the
because
commission
that again
chose.
would act as a stimulus so people could see, oh geez, if I do this within a year, I buy this property within, to get that moving. I would like to see that. It takes a vote of all three of us, but I would like to see that in there. And the other point I wanted was if a builder wants to build a sidewalk, no matter where they're at, they can do that. They don't have to say, no, you're in zone B, you got to pay into the fund. If they want to build it, I'd like to see them being able to build it.
Let me ask a follow-up question on that, Commissioner. If they built the sidewalk, would you still want them to pay this pedestrian mitigation fee? Or if they build a sidewalk in the middle of wherever that is, that they're just done, just as if they were an alternate A? Okay.
What was that answer?
The answer was yes. I'm sorry. I was shaking my head, yes.
So.
Okay, so the yes was, you would be in favor of having them build the sidewalk and paying the fee?
No.
Okay.
If they want to build the sidewalk, they get to build their sidewalk. If they don't, then they pay the fee,
Okay.
either or.
Okay.
Yeah, and mine going back, I don't know if you're finished, but mine going back is, I really want to encourage the rehab of some of these properties that have sat vacant. And a lot of those properties, it isn't going to take much to do a substantial remodel, even if they don't increase the footprint, to bring the properties up to a livable condition. And I want to make sure that there is nothing that is, could be considered more of a burden for them to do that. So not a penalty such as, oh, so you're going to have to do something above and beyond. So I would really like for them to pay less of a fee on that.
Could we possibly get a recommendation on that? And the only reason is we're going to get this information, and then our plan is to bring it back under a briefing report where you can actually look at the changes that will be made. This is really kind of a reconnaissance mission here to try and develop the standards changes. If we need to have fees, they probably are going to need to be adopted by ordinance and included in the fee ordinance. So I'm hearing like 50%, 40% of this, instead of 67, that would go down to 40%, or are we going down to 30%? Or I guess where is that? Or can you just give me a dollar value? If it was $1,500 for the, let's just say example one there where you're grading it out to 20 feet, you would want that fee down here to be like $500 or what?
If on the 50%?
Yes.
I guess as long as they're not changing the footprint. If they change the footprint, I think that then they should be, that should jump them into the category of
So if,
the group B or the option B. But if they don't change the footprint, then
So no change in the footprint, and so they'd be paying 50% of the $1,500? Okay, gotcha.
so that's one option.
That's one option.
I would-
I'm open to
Right, I
whatever
mean,
the consensus
What we can
is.
probably do is I think we have about 4 or 5 different things that we're close to, and we could just vote them right out. I mean, we could basically give you marching orders if we just approach each one, because I probably wouldn't go that way. I would probably want to go a little different way, and then Tracy might want to go a little different way. But if we're talking about an existing house that's vacant, and Habitat for Humanity wants to move and rehab that house, my personal feelings is, or anybody wants to come, an existing house, not a lot, nothing to do with vacant lots. Vacant lots are a different deal. But if you're looking at existing vacant house, someone wants to rehab that house, my personal feelings are that they do the grading in front. There's no mitigation fee. They've got a new house. They've got new on the tax rolls. They've got, forget the sidewalks completely on that one. If you're building a new house on a vacant lot, then I think that that this is, the mitigation thing is great. You're saving money to connect sidewalks where need be, and so that's where Commissioner Olson and I kind of differ on that, I guess. So if we're talking about existing vacant house, someone wants to go and rehab it, my personal feelings is let them grade the front of that and just forget about the sidewalks for now. Remember, all these things change as we grow and et cetera, but that would give incentive, especially for Habitat for Humanity, to come in and start possibly working with the city and rehab it. So that would be one, 0 versus 1,500 or whatever, I guess. So that kind of would be, what do you think about that one? So existing.
The only problem I have with that is that, we're a community that we're trying to work to a goal, to an end on this, and if you exempt some from nothing, then the ones who are paying are going to feel a little bit burdened. And we're all in this together. You're already asking people to pay to a mitigation fund that they may never see a sidewalk in front of their house. So I think it's only fair that every property should bear some level of burden on this. It's a holistic community thing. We can't just say, you're exempt, you're not, because it's going to create animosity towards the city for giving someone a break when these guys aren't getting a break. We all use sidewalks. We all need them no matter where they are. So I think it's only fair that everybody participates in this, no matter what level you're at.
Good conversation. At the moment, 0 is happening.
I'd be remiss not to add in to this at this point. There's substantial case law regarding when mitigation for impacts is required and what those are. The Supreme Court has weighed in on this, and there has to be a nexus between the development that's proposed and the mitigation that's required, as well as a proportional weighting. So to have standards that vary widely for similar improvements might be challenged. I would caution you to try to be as consistent as possible in terms of evaluating what the impact is on the community and what you're trying to mitigate.
Okay, so theoretically, again, the vacant house that somebody wants to improve the neighborhood and do, then you think there would be a problem if we, because they are improving that, to lessen the cost to somebody. You think that couldn't happen if we were having someone else on a vacant lot pay for that sidewalk?
I think there's a considerable argument you could make to the mitigation being lessened in the case where there was already a residence there, and you're not comparing that necessarily to a new dwelling where the baseline condition was no residence at all. I think there is some wiggle room there.
Oh, okay.
But to go from 0 to something, I'm not sure you can get there.
Okay, well, this is where we need to discuss this, and so, Tracy, it's up to you.
I think we have to be fair, and I think that we have to look at what the goals are. The goals are to get sidewalks, and the goals that we're adding in here tonight is to make these empty houses that need work affordable for people to rehab. And so if I'm understanding Steve correctly, I think that if we were to lower the cost, we would be okay, but we can't just say some are 0 or some don't fall and others you have to pay. So, okay, I would be in favor of lowering the cost.
And just as a kind of a side point, that's part of the reason you see in the proposed scheme that existing lots that already have sidewalk have a small nominal fee in there. That was based on some early discussion with Kathleen, exactly along the lines of what Steve just said, that if we're going to make this a community-wide benefit, we've got to have the map that shows where the first stage of construction and rehabilitation is, and we've got to have it fair to everybody. And so that was kind of sidewalks here, not a huge impact locally, but globally there's some. So we got to have a fee there, and then increasing that depending on what the specific circumstances were.
And just by starting off, there's a huge difference between a property that has an existing house on it and a property that has never had a house. So there's no reason to compare those two as far as treating them fairly, I think. So I would be in favor of maybe lowering that as an incentive to rehab our existing housing stock.
Okay, so lowering it to, would that be more like $500 if there's an existing house and someone wanted to do that? You know, and again, we're not talking about vacant lots or developments or commercial or anything, just infill basic residential lots where an existing house is there that someone wants to rehab. Would we talk, instead of, it looks like 1,500, would it be 500? Would it be 750? I mean, I'm just kind of, you know, I'll take whatever I can get to try and get something going. I mean, you know.
Commissioner Olson's proposal was 50% of the 1,500 or 750. Sounds like you're maybe suggesting 500.
Well, I'd be fine to agree with Commissioner Olson to move the point forward. We have a few other subjects, so I have no problem with
750
it.
sounds
750,
good.
okay, there you go. We're in agreement.
Mike just pointed out, and I need to just clarify because maybe there is confusion, that option 3 is that substantial remodel without increasing the existing footprint would be the 750 or the 500.
All right.
And then if there's a site that there's existing sidewalk already out front, and you're doing a substantial remodel, not changing the footprint. Okay, doing anything. So substantial remodel, expanding the footprint, doing an infill where there's no building there at all, and you have existing sidewalk already, we still would like to get a small fee of 15% of the amount, just so that we can get a little more money in the pot to do these infills where they make a lot of sense to do.
You okay? I'm okay?
I'm
All right.
okay with that. There's always repair, and I doubt that there's ever a sidewalk that's been existing for any number of years that's in perfect shape.
Okay, so let's move on to the next point then.
And just for clarity, I sent an email off to Kathleen kind of asking about next steps on, you know, these pieces of it. And so when she does get back to me, we could see some minor tweaks on some of this stuff as her and I and Greg and others start working on, you know, the mitigation fund portion of this and making sure that the fees work and aren't going to get us in trouble and those kind of things, so.
Okay.
So you have an existing infill lot, there's no house there at all. So someone wants to come and put a house there. They're going to grade in the front, and then how much are you proposing? Is it 1,500 then? If they're building a new house, no sidewalk, what is that fee?
Okay, I guess for clarity, the table that we handed out in the handouts, actually they were in your packets. Part of the discussion was at what level do you want the lineal footage cost? Now, the example we've been talking about tonight, we've been using this $50 a lineal foot as the example. Now, the commission could go higher or lower than that, and then that would change this percentage. But from what I understand, hearing what you're saying is that the only change we've really made is we've changed this 67% down here under number 3 to 50. So it would, instead of it being the you know, $1,005 or the $1,508, it would basically go down to $750 or 25, yeah, $1,250. So that, if that works, or, you know, is 50 what the commission would like to do? And there was a question whether that was a square foot cost or whether or not it was a lineal foot cost. And this is what we're saying is a lineal foot. So it's your frontage. You know, if you have 60 feet of frontage on the road, it'd be 60 times this lineal foot cost.
Okay, if we're looking at lineal foot, nothing that I'm proposing is to punish other people or any of that. I just want the city to clean itself up, and I want houses to be built, and I want some sort of incentive that would get us to jumpstart this. That's all I'm saying. I think all the citizens want that too. I just say we got to take steps to get us moving out of the recession. Anything we're setting here in policy can be changed 6 months or a year down the road. If we get a big boom, if all of a sudden the city's booming, we can raise these things wherever we want. But right now, jump-starting this economy here is, I think, important. So I would go down to the $35 a lineal foot rather than the $1,500. If you're asking me, which would I choose of these, I would go to the bottom one because it gives a better chance for incentive or somebody to do something. So, but I know that Commissioner Olson has talked, I think, around the $1,550 a square foot or lineal foot. So that's where the conversation is. I would choose the lowest of that, and maybe he would do the 50, and then Tracy might want to do something. So this is how we can probably talk it out, right? We want to know that.
One more clarifying point for the discussion here. The dollar values we're using are assuming a 60-foot lot. We have quite a variety down to 25 feet in some small cases, a lot of 30-footers. So that's why we're kind of talking in the end of a base fee that's a per foot cost that, again, to be fair. So as the lots get wider or narrower, the fee is proportional to the actual lot that's being developed.
Also have corner lots that have considerably more frontage than 60 feet too. And you're talking about gross lineal footage, so the fees will be considerably higher there unless you want to consider lower cost for corner lots, which is kind of wild because eventually you're going to build sidewalks around the whole deal. So it is more costly to build sidewalks on corner lots. So that's why, so anyway.
I think it's important to know that the true cost of the sidewalk is the $50 a lineal foot, and the closer we can stay at the true cost, because eventually the city's going to be paying it, making up the difference out of the mitigation fund that's not there, or a grant, or a loan.
Sure.
So I think the better we come into those true costs is a better way to go. We're already substantially reducing them, so everybody's getting subsidized even more so. So I'm definitely in favor of staying at the $50 a lineal foot.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Moore? There's one in the middle.
Yeah, well, that's not going to be any help at all. So let's talk about it for another 20 minutes. I am in favor of the actual truer cost.
Very good.
Okay,
Anything else?
Another question that Commissioner Olson brought up, I think, about if a builder wants to put a sidewalk in front of his house. I understand that, it makes sense, but again, then the chunk thing it's there, and unless we're really ready to build onto that or complete that corner or that thing, we are still building a sidewalk that is just a chunk that wheelchairs go up and down off of. That is, and maybe that's what we decide. So Commissioner Moore, have you weighed in on that one? So if a builder wants to put a sidewalk where there's nothing to connect to, at one point, I think the first time you brought this before, when you said that, no, he couldn't, we would have to do this, but I think Commissioner Olson would like to put that back in. Well, I probably would like to take it out, but we're three people, so this goes back to Tracy Moore again.
Why would a builder want to put a chunk of sidewalk in if they weren't required? I thought that part of this discussion is because that adds so much to the cost. So what would be the reason that someone would want to?
Parking for one, I mean, it gives you a definition of where the parking begins and ends. Safety factor, a number of people have pointed that out. And also, as a builder will tell you, they can build cheaper than $50 a square foot, or a lineal foot on a normal flat lot. So why wouldn't they get the option of saving themselves a little money if they wanted to do it? And I don't see that it hurts anything.
Oh, I see, rather than putting the money into the...
Rather than paying into a fund, they could actually build it cheaper.
I suppose that it would make it more attractive to a buyer as well.
That's why they call it curb appeal.
Like, we call it chunk appeal.
Some do.
Well, this is why, this is good
Realtors
conversation.
don't.
Sure, and this is what it's all about. This is trying to make Shelton a better place and sidewalks that connect. And this is, if we vote this way, there's 3 commissioners here. So Commissioner Moore, I guess it's, should the builder have the right, if he wants that sidewalk in the middle of a street with no sidewalk, should he be allowed to do that?
Yes, I'm into peer pressure.
All right? So there, we've got your decision on that.
Very good.
Okay, is there anything else that we can help you with?
I think Those were
Is
the
that's-
major
okay.
questions right
All right.
now. We can get the
Okay.
technical
All right.
writing piece done now and work with Kathleen on some of the other policy and associated pieces from there, I believe.
One other little point over here says, I'm basically in favor, if we're gonna do something, let's get moving on it, and I don't think we have time for the committee. The committee could be a good thing to have, to talk about future changes to this, but at the moment, I would like to get something going, so if we had some builders wanting to build this summer, we could hopefully get something in place to do that. I know we have public comment, and so I'm trying to work between Commissioner Olson on we did comment before, and then we would talk, and now we talking, and then we're gonna do the public, so I'm trying to weigh that in. So if we were gonna talk, I wanted to get my talking done. So just be done with it, okay? So,
The other point I just wanted to make for clarity and for the record is that for non-residential development within an NR zone, the last three rows of information on here reflect a slightly higher pedestrian mitigation fee than we would for residential development. So there is a tier in here for non-residential type of development within an NR zone.
okay, very good. Now, if anyone would like to speak to this, Mr. Yando and other people, let me go by ask Gary Yando if he would speak first, because Tom, you and Marilyn have talked first. So would you like to come and speak for a little bit about this subject?
Kind of hard to do now that you've answered most of the questions.
Well, yeah, I know.
Well, I guess I take offense to the negotiation being done between staff and the committee before you hear from the public. But that's my feeling. If I might, Mr. Olson, I appreciate what you've done as far as getting a hold of contractors and finding out what exactly would work in these particular areas. Mike, Greg, you've done a great job. I think you're on the right track. But somehow or rather we treat forming a small committee as a plague. And I'm not sure that's right. I take offense to it. And I say that because I wasn't asking for a 10-member committee. I wasn't asking for a 20-member committee. What I was asking for was the opportunity, as Mr. Olson has, to get a couple of people together with Mike and Greg, a couple of engineers, a couple of builders, a couple of real estate people. Wouldn't take more than a couple of meetings, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, just a small part, just to make sure we're on the right track. And I noticed here tonight, and I've sat and looked over what Mike and Greg put together, and there are loopholes in that, and there are issues which you are trying to cover. But I think that should be done and brought to you. I've sent comments to you guys, and I've sent comments by email to each one of you as a commission. I have asked that that first part of A be removed from any further use by the city doing anything to do with the surveyor designs. I don't think, and I think that was made, the information was presented at one of the meetings that you didn't have the money to justify that particular work, and personally I didn't feel as though the city should be involved with that particular work. That should be the work of the private property owner. The use of the crushed rock, the application lasts a very short time. My problem is it's going to be put in at this point on public property in most cases. The maintenance of that, Mike has talked to me a little bit about that, and I'm sure what he's telling me is probably accurate, but I do want it on the record that when you put crushed rock down, unless it's put down right, it's going to weed up and it's going to grow grass, and you're going to be right back to where you were. The main goal here was to use these, I believe, as public walkways, and you need to separate, if you're going to use them as public walkways, you're going to need to separate them from the asphalt of the highway or the driving surface, I would think, or you're going to have accidents. Who's going to maintain them? If the people are using them when they're first put in, then they have to get out when they're weeds grow and stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense. You've already covered about substantial remodel. I'm not sure about that. I think there's some issues you touched upon them. I think you're on the right track there. The pedestrian mitigation, I guess I have an issue to the point where if I'm going to go out and put so much money for somebody else out on 8th Street here to have their sidewalk put in, when I've got some work that needs to be done on mine, I think that should stay as my money that's put in there, not used somewhere else. But I'm not up to speed all the way with pedestrian mitigation, so my understanding, the accountings would be taking care of the mitigation monies, and that's a good move. The city council has put together, I got to go back to this small group, guys and ladies, excuse me. Please consider sometimes this stuff. I understand staff being burdened with additional work. You're in time crunches and so forth. But taking a couple of hours out of their schedules, you don't have to do that because you talk to the contractors every day. But if they could do that and have people involved in the community, I feel like the Lone Ranger up here because I've been beating on this thing for 8 years. And finally we're moving in the right direction. Don't let it stop. But a couple more weeks of getting together and getting the public's input to justify what we're doing in the future for the betterment of Shelton is only going to be a benefit to y'all. I'd like to just change one other thing. The gentleman back here made a statement about the sewer out on by the Dayton Airport Highway. I would ask the board to take the necessary steps. You're all aware I've been involved in the sewer for a number of years in them areas, and having that sewer available out there is a real positive. And the port originally was involved. They have been involved. You got an opportunity for a real plus in that area. And I think that should be moved in the direction it should be. I thank you.
All right, and usually, Gary, I'd like to talk to you for just a second. Usually we don't necessarily respond to speakers and whatnot, but I want to say that personally, I was not trying to offend you when I wanted to put the small group. It's not to offend you that I said I wasn't in favor, because if I thought it could be done in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, but we've been talking about this for 20 years. You and I have been talking about this for 20 years.
Too long.
I am excited about the chance of moving the needle, and I'll just tell you that I have a fear of a small group discussing this thing and us getting past this buildings. We need help. We need action right now. So that's my concern. Second on this is I do appreciate your involvement. I appreciate your comments, and I would love to see you involved with the talking points about this, whether it's a small group that can kind of do something in conjunction with what these guys are doing. My main concern is that we get something moving before we lose the summer. And so, not to offend you, so please, if I did, I'm sorry.
You got two gentlemen sitting here that I have all the faith in that could get this done in a couple of weeks. I know them both. Mike better than Greg, and I know Steve well. Mr. Olson has taken it upon himself to talk to contractors in order to get the information that he needs to make this thing work. Getting a hold of a couple more people will not stop this process.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Gary, I'd offer up that depending on administrative side, I would be willing to meet with the, and take something back to these guys' input. I like where we're at with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to delay it, but I also would understand, I would like to meet with a few people if you wanted to form a small group that didn't involve staff right away, and maybe something will come out of it even more so. I mean, I'm willing to do that.
You have a lot of talent
That's
around here.
legal.
Nothing wrong with having coffee and talking about things.
So I'll talk with you after the meeting then.
All right, thank you very much.
You bet.
All right, Marilyn, do you want to speak first, and then Tom?
Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. I spoke with Greg this morning about this. My street cannot be the only one in Shelton that has a very narrow easement, part of it taken up by a steep uphill and the other side a steep downhill. It was built and platted before anybody even managed 5-foot sidewalks, and I want you to imagine the curb appeal of a weedy, crushed rock, grated out space with a picket row of no parking signs. On-street parking is absolutely vital for a livable residential neighborhood. And yes, all of the homes on my street have their requisite 2 parking places. But the family across the street has regular church meetings, and there will be 10 or 12 cars. Next to them is a family that has company almost every weekend. And across the street next to me is a fellow that had quite a game party on Sunday. We need that on-street parking. I've heard you all talk about doing away with the city program that spreads gravel if people buy a load and haul it in to spread because of how difficult it is to maintain, that it does get weedy, it spreads out into the grass. I like what you have done with the sidewalk proposal. I think it's badly needed and I think it's well thought out. I would ask that you not complicate it, certainly with regulations about where people can park. I would even go so far as to say don't complicate it with this plan for grading and spreading crushed rock that will be an eyesore before very many years pass. Thank you.
Maryland for president. You and I are on track on that one, but we're in the minority maybe. Thank you for your comments. Tom, do you want to speak for a little bit on this subject?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tom Davis. And I also support the sidewalk proposal in its current form, and I trust you to work out the small details. But and I understand how it pertains to infill lots and to total rehabs, but I think I think it's important that you make it very clear how it does not pertain necessarily to ordinary citizens doing ordinary remodels. Otherwise, when you put this proposal on the table, this chambers will be filled with people who are filled with misinformation. And we can avoid that by being very clear. Also, I mean, it's different if you take a home and put a second story on it, and that's one of the rare cases where you're going to have 50% of the total value of the property in a remodel. That's going to be a very rare occasion. But what about people who do a new roof for $20,000 and then do a remodel on their kitchen and then put the new windows in and do it over a period of time? All these remodels need to be on the same permit to be in their aggregate for 50% of the value, or do we need to have a time parameter if those remodels are done within 18 months or a year or whatever the time is? But you have to be very specific because the people out there will always assume the worst, and that's natural, and they come down here because they don't want to be caught up in this web without airing their views. So I think as it stands now, and the major portion of this discussion has been for contractors, rehabbers, and so on, but I think you need to address how it's going to affect or not affect the average citizen doing remodels. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your comment. Anyone else like to speak to this subject? Okay. And I just want to apologize to everybody here. There's a little confusion with our commission board on the way we handle this public comment on individual subjects. Last meeting we had a little conflict about how that worked, and I'm trying to figure it out, and we probably need to get policy a little bit clearer on this, because I like those comments before we make our decisions. We haven't made final decisions anyway, Gary. All this stuff is what we're saying go for, but we haven't voted on it, or it's still, I think, up for grabs to a degree. But I do have, based upon Tom's last comment, I do have a little concern about the 50% remodeling and then this mitigation fee. And again, over a period of time, I would assume if they get a permit to do it all at one time, that would be it. But if they do something one year and something the next year, then I don't think that would fall into that. But see, I don't know how you figure that stuff out anyway. So we're going to have to fine-tune this thing. And so Commissioner Olson, I think talking to Gary Ando and possibly, having some other ideas brought into it, I think is good. I think we're all going in the right direction, and I greatly favor it. But we've talked it to death tonight. So let's move forward with no more public comment periods. Anyone else want to talk about anything for the good of the order? I don't see it. So Any more administration final touches?
Actually, that was the administration report, and are there any touches?
I just want to make a comment for the record and for the public that we now have established a date for our Lake Boulevard project to bring that open house to Bordeaux Elementary School. We're planning on doing that the evening of February 24th. That's a Tuesday. And our hope is to share the scope of the project. We'll have design drawings there. They're about 60%. So we're at a point where, you know, good comments can induce changes into the drawings. Hopefully we can kind of separate at the meeting and be able to talk one-on-one with the people about their particular frontage. So just to let the commission know and the public know that that's coming up here at the end of the month.
Do you know what time that will be?
We've initially set it for 6 p.m.
Okay, Mike?
Two things that aren't on the purple sheet. We have an amendment to our MSA contract for the Upper Mountain View projects that's coming forward. Due to the extended time frame to meet the scope that's already approved in the contracts, they're asking for a little bit of compensation, which is reasonably justified on their behalf. So we'll be bringing forward an amendment to that effect. Also, the local agency agreement for the SR3 project, we'll be bringing forward a supplement for that to move some monies out of design into the right-of-way acquisition so we can finalize the work that Steve and others have been doing with Simpson and Green Diamond for the piece of property there at the Park and Ride area.
Okay, that's it, Your Honor.
All right, and our next meeting will be February 9th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.